elections in Uttar Pradesh are fought on issues of caste, community and others. But this time around, there was a huge economic angle to it. Opposition parties were targeting the government over demonetization. Man of the hour, Mr. Arun Jaitley, the election is almost over. Do you think that demonetization eventually, has it hurt the BJP or has it retained your old base and created a new vote base?
You see, demonetization was ethically a correct decision. When I first emphasize ethically, it was intended to eliminate all the vices in a currency, in an economy over-dependent on cash. So whether it's corruption or it's fake currency or it's terror, and predominantly your capacity to generate black money. No economy can sustain indefinitely only on the strength of a shadow economy. This is the first key decision taken in the last 7 decades which placed a premium on honesty and disincentivized dishonesty. Economically, it was a correct decision because the world over, economies are moving towards digitization and banking transactions. Less currency in paper form, more banking transaction, larger formal economy, integration of the informal with the formal. That's the necessity. And you use technology for that purpose. So in terms of economy, after a temporary pain, it will create a situation where your GDP will grow. And the recent data has now indicated that there is a growth taking place as far as the formal economy is concerned, even in a quarter which was most impacted by demonetization.
Will you say that this is the most impacted or the impact will come in the next quarter?
No, I think as the remonetization picks up, there are two good sides. A, remonetization is picked up. B, sales are all coming back. And I think there is some pickup now taking place in the global economy also. So a combination of all these factors, I think, and of course India's own credibility globally as one of the only economies which is reforming and growing, I think will all add to it in the quarters to come. The fears which were being created, or the panic which was being created by some people, I think was highly exaggerated. The data itself has shown. If you recollect, when the November and the December revenue figures came, I had said that anecdotal evidence can be exaggerated, but revenue figures are real. So if your excise figures show that manufacturing has gone up, if the VAT figures show that the sales have gone up,
a good monsoon?
And a good monsoon, and therefore I think the manner in which the rural economy was handled, 8% growth in agricultural production this year likely.
Where does monumental disaster, organized loot stand then? Prime Minister yesterday talked about hard work and Harvard. He was perhaps taking a dig at perhaps those people who had said that the demonetization is an unmitigated disaster.
I'll tell you, the Congress when in power did not take a single step to curb black money. At least I can't recollect any major step. This government has taken one step after another. Now you allow an unjust enrichment in favor of the tax evader because the money that he earns by evading taxes is money which was come to the state and be used for the poor in this country. So politically, when you ask me this question as to what is the impact of demonetization, I said economically it will help, ethically it's a correct step. I think politically it has created a situation where a very large section of the electorate has started identifying itself with the Prime Minister and with the BJP.
Will you say that this time around in UP people have voted, when they have voted, demonetization was a factor, or you will say that it was an exercise which has perhaps gone down well or bad with people, but it has not dictated the vote?
There are several factors which are influencing UP. Bad governance of the SP and the BSP. The narrow social basis. You see, what the SP and BSP did was they evolved a political model where they only empowered one community or two communities each and alienated themselves from the rest of the society. All the other communities are now together to hit back. I think this is influencing the elections.
You're talking about the most backward castes and others.
I'm saying it goes far beyond that. There's a huge rainbow coalition in UP. If you look at it socially, which is against the Samajwadi Party today. And I think it was an act of nervousness of the Samajwadi Party.
You will say the alliance was nervousness.
Obviously, the alliance was nervousness, and to a non-party in UP, the Congress was a non-party in UP, to concede 103 seats.
But still you think that they will do better than had they gone alone?
I won't say what would have happened, but I am quite certain that they're probably going to lose the election. So I think what's happened is, besides the Rainbow Coalition, besides this bad governance, I think the law and order problem, the emphasis on giving criminals so many tickets by these particular parties. Now, as we move into Uttar Pradesh, I'm in Varanasi with you at the moment, to give seats to the likes from the family of Mukhtar Ansari and so on by the BSP. And it's becoming in constituencies, in districts after districts, the fight between the BJP on one hand and these kind of criminal mafias on the other. So once election starts taking this particular shape, this will help us. I think where demonetization comes into place is that the sections which had never been empowered are today feeling that this is a move which will in the long run help the country and help me.
See,
because more revenues with the government will mean more money spent on the poor people.
See, more spending is a long-term thing, but eventually do you think the government also has played on a social phenomena in which people who are tired of corruption perhaps are happy about the fact that those who are corrupt were made to run?
I think several factors have come together. The mafias, the corruption, the narrow social basis creating a...
Did you also erode the economic base of a lot of political parties?
It could. Because I do hope once the finance bill is passed, the mode of political funding will also undergo a serious change.
The electoral bonds.
The bonds, the check payments and so on. At least we are endeavoring to move in the right direction.
How quick are you going to be working on this electoral bond?
You see, the finance bill has to be passed, which I hope certainly will be passed in the next session of Parliament. And thereafter a scheme has to be notified under the Income Tax Act with regard to electoral bonds, which will be doing that.
On coming back on GDP, while the opposition is very clear that somehow it is more of playing with the figures that the CSO has done largely, because by dipping the figures of 2015-16, the figures of 2016-17 look better.
I don't think the CSO's credibility has ever been in doubt. It is the same CSO which has continued through the decades. Even the personnel in the CSOs has been very, very professionally trained, and the same personnel has been handling it through various governments. The data brought out by them, so when they revised the data 2 years ago, because they had a separate formulation, they only didn't revise it from 2014 onwards, they revised it from 2011 onwards. And therefore that's an economic exercise which goes on. Now this is the first time that people, when they find you've started questioning it. And here I have a question particularly for the Congress party. The Congress has ruled this country longer than anybody else. How can a political party put itself in a state that if the country's economic data does well, it indicates that the economy is doing better, that the party goes into mourning?
Do you think Congress went into mourning?
Obviously, the reactions are overstated, the figures are doctored, the CSO's credibility is...
Did the Congress also make a mistake vis-a-vis demonetization in opposing it?
Well, I would say the Congress made a monumental blunder. The vote amongst the poorer sections in favor of the BJP has been consolidated thanks to the anti-demonetization stand of the Congress and some other political parties. I think if the country does well in economic terms, why should the Congress look depressed?
Do you think
if the country did well in the surgical strikes, why should the Congress start questioning it? I think the Congress needs a serious introspection.
Is it pressure from fringe parties, and is it from regional players like, say, Mamata Banerjee, Aam Aadmi Party?
Well, I don't know whose pressure it is, but I think there is a disconnect between the people and the Congress. Now, I'm answering this by a...
No, Sheila Dikshit said that Rahul Gandhi is immature.
I'm not on personalities. I'd rather put it by way of a question. Let us say if Panditji was here, or if Mrs. Indira Gandhi was here, I would differ with them. Or even if Rajiv Gandhi was here, would they have gone to the Jawaharlal Nehru University in support of the children who raised those slogans? In fact, I have no doubt that some of them would have been more aggressive than the BJP in opposing them. Because this is just not done.
But do you see a pattern? There is JNU, there is Rohit Vemula, and now Delhi University. Is this a deliberate attempt to hit a constituency which went with the BJP in 2014?
Well, if you see the student union election results across the country, you'll realize that the students very strongly favor a strong nation. There is a fringe element in universities. The fringe is not the mainstream.
No, but are they behind constantly creating a pattern of trouble?
Well, let's be very clear. Wasn't it clear that the statement I recently made, that this is an alliance of subversion between some ultra-left groups and some separatist groups? In several campuses, you can see that happening. Why should mainstream parties go and identify with them?
There is a risk always when we talk like this. There was a time when emergency was there and you all were very active workers. You went to jail and similar terms could be used. Is there a difference this time around?
Well, if in my entire career, I've been a political worker since 1970, or a student politics and politics, so 47 years. If I look back, if there is one thing I'm proud of, it's the fact that I was one of the few youngsters at that time who fought the emergency. In fact, I was the first person to offer satyagraha and go to jail.
But even then somebody would have called you subversives.
You see, the subversion was of democracy. I was fighting a dictatorship. And if somebody thought, in 75 we used to be called subversives, but history records our role with a sense of satisfaction. And therefore, when my friend Mr. Chidambaram said, were you subversives at that time? He must realize that it was subversion of the democracy by his leader, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, who we were trying to oppose.
Is there something happening vis-a-vis the police action and others that it snowballs into a position?
I don't know. These are all local issues which I'm frankly not very competent to speak. I don't deal with them. I think there is a conscious attempt by some in India to make it appear that nationalism is a bad word. Well, it's a word which most Indians are proud of. I am certainly proud of it. And if there is a scope for a political debate on it, I don't think we'll ever be on the back foot in that case.
See, even if we assume that it is a deliberate attempt to foment trouble, don't you think police system and others need to be sensitized that this is something which is deliberate and need to be handled better?
Right.
Say, for example, Kiran Rijiju's tweet perhaps could have been a slightly differently worded, that the girl is being misguided.
Well, I don't want to get into these micro issues of the subject, but I am concerned with the big debate. And the big debate is that you can't allow separatism or breaking India into pieces or severing away a territory of India into some act which was find support from the mainstream. I'm concerned with that. If the fringe did it, India could live with it. If the mainstream starts indirectly strengthening this idea, that's a source of worry.
When you say mainstream, are you talking about the Congress and the left parties and others?
I am speaking about a lot of mainstream parties which get involved in it. And every time you identify with it on some pretext or the other, you say, oh, I did not go to the JNU to support separatist slogans, but I went against the police. But the two in effect were the same. You were seen standing with those who were trying to weaken their country.
Coming back to the UP elections, how confident are you of a win?
There is no constituency in UP that we are contesting to lose. The environment is positive. The political environment is totally on our side. The issues, I think, have made our campaign very organized, extremely aggressive in terms of the political debate itself, and the social coalition supporting us is very large.
Are you looking at a hung assembly possibility? Is that on the drawing board?
You see, I think psephologists in India at times are confused when they predict hung assemblies. The voter is never confused. I don't remember last when India saw a hung assembly.
So, when you started planning for this election, it seems that a lot of work went in economically, your budget, your policies, the Ujjwala gas yojana and others. Do you see on the ground those things providing dividends to the party?
I think we've succeeded in identifying ourselves with the weaker sections of society. This expansion of our vote base is extremely significant, and it's in most parts of the country.
From the Trader Baniya party, you are a poor man's party?
You see, we've always been for a progressive economy. We will always be supporting industry and trade because we believe that the trade economy must grow in this country. It's only then that we will have the resources to service the poor.
Last question.
There is no contradiction between being pro-business and pro-poor.
Last question. It is being said that if the BJP loses UP, the reform process might go on the backbenches.
Well, why should I answer a hypothetical question? I'm quite confident of
Reform
a victory.
remains, commitment remains.
Well, I'm confident of a victory, and reforms will go on. The Indian economy will continue to strengthen.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. Mr. Arun Jaitley, Finance Minister in Varanasi, campaigning for the party, confident that the party is going to do well.